Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another FinQuiz session. Today, we're exploring how to value a derivative using a one-period binomial model, a topic that can seem intimidating at first, but once you wrap your head around the key ideas, it's actually pretty straightforward. And remember, if you need extra clarity or a more condensed review, those Stanley Notes, mock exams, and battle-ready summaries from FinQuiz have helped countless CFA candidates just like you zip through their prep and lock in those crucial exam points. Now, I know the binomial model sounds like some kind of mathematical monster, but trust me, it's really just common sense wrapped in some numbers. Let's start with a quick snapshot of what the binomial model is all about. Picture yourself trying to predict where a stock price might land in the future. It could go up or it could go down. That's the heart of the binomial framework. We assume there are only two possible outcomes for the price of an underlying asset. Although real-world markets involve countless price paths, this simplified two-way approach can still give a surprisingly accurate valuation for options, bonds with embedded options, or other derivatives. Let's say you're trying to predict what'll happen to Tesla's stock price tomorrow. You don't need to overanalyze every single market factor. At the end of the day, you just need to know one thing. Will the price go up or down? That's it. That's the entire idea behind the binomial model. Simple, right? So the binomial model works on a basic principle. In any given time period, let's say one day, a stock price has only two possible moves. It either goes up to a higher price or goes down to a lower price. Think of it like flipping a coin, except instead of getting heads or tails, the stock either increases or decreases in value. For example, say Apple stock is sitting at $150 today. Tomorrow, based on market forces, it could jump to $160 or drop to $140. That's your binomial world. Two possible outcomes. We don't need to know the exact probability of each happening. We just care that these are the two realistic possibilities. You can think of it like betting on a basketball game. You don't know exactly how things will turn out, but you do know there are only two outcomes. Your team either wins or loses. Why does this matter? Well, when you're dealing with derivatives, especially options, underlying prices can swing wildly, and each swing can change the potential payoff. The binomial model basically says, let's assume we have a certain probability of moving up and a certain probability of moving down, and we'll figure out the no-arbitrage value from there. Now let's explore the binomial model. All right, let's break this down so you can picture the model in your mind. Imagine we're starting at time zero, with the price of the underlying asset being S0. Now, after one period, maybe a year, maybe a month, that price has two possible paths. It can either jump up to a higher level, which we'll call SU, or it can drop down to a lower level, which we'll call SD. Think of it like flipping a coin. Heads, the price goes up. Tails, it goes down. Simple, right? Now, let's get a little more mathematical about it. If we take the ratio of the up price, SU, to the original price, S0, that ratio gives us RU, the return for an up move. On the other hand, if we look at the ratio of the down price, SD, to the original price, that's RD, the return for a down move. Here's where probabilities come in. We say there's a probability Q that the price moves up. And if the probability of moving up is Q, then naturally the probability of moving down is 1 minus Q. Now here's something important. The bigger the volatility of the underlying asset, the greater the gap between SU and SD. In other words, higher volatility means higher highs and lower lows. This is why when you're pricing an option using this binomial model, you need to have a good sense of how volatile the underlying asset might be. The volatility directly impacts those potential price movements, which in turn influences the option's value. What really matters is how big those price moves are. We define this in terms of what's called a gross return. If the stock goes up, we call that return R up, and if it goes down, we call it R down. It's just the future price divided by today's price. So if the stock jumps from $150 to $160, we'd say the R up or RU is 160 divided by 150, which is 1.067. That just means the price increased by 6.7%. And if the stock falls to $140, the R down is 140 divided by 150, which is 0.933. That means it dropped by 6.7%. See, no complicated math, just simple percentages. Now, let's take it one step further. If we know these possible price changes, we can figure out the value of an option today, even though we have no idea whether the stock will actually go up or down. It's like investing in a startup. You don't know if it's going to be the next Tesla or if it's going to crash and burn. But you do know that if it takes off, you'll make a lot of money, and if it fails, you'll lose your investment. The binomial model works the same way. It tells us how to price things without needing a crystal ball. All right, now, before we move forward, let's clear up the confusion between Bernoulli and binomial, because these terms sound similar, but aren't the same thing. A Bernoulli trial is just one event with two possible outcomes, like flipping a coin once or a stock price moving up or down in a single period. The binomial model, on the other hand, is built on multiple Bernoulli trials, where the price keeps moving up or down over several periods, creating a binomial tree. So think of Bernoulli as one step, and binomial as a whole series of steps that help us model price movements over time. So let's use this binomial mindset to price a European call option, an option that can only be exercised at expiration. Imagine you also want to factor in the fact that interest rates themselves might bounce around in a one-period model. That's what we call a binomial interest rate model, meaning next year's interest rate can be either one of two possible values. Visually, you draw a little tree. At time 0, we start with the current rate. And by time 1, that rate either goes up or down. All right, imagine you are a shop owner selling umbrellas. You're worried that if it rains, you'll sell a lot and make money. But if it stays sunny, you might be stuck with too many unsold umbrellas. To protect yourself, you decide to do something clever. Buy a small number of raincoats. Why? Because when it rains, raincoats also sell well, helping you balance out any potential losses from unsold umbrellas. This is a simple way of thinking about hedging, and the proportion of raincoats you buy relative to your umbrellas is like the hedge ratio in options trading. It helps you manage risk. The hedge ratio helps traders figure out how much of an underlying asset, like a stock, they need to buy or sell to offset the risk of holding an option. Let's break it down with a simple example. First, let's understand option payoffs. Imagine you have a European call option that lets you buy a stock at a fixed price of 100 euros in 1 year. The stock's current price is 80. And in 1 year, it can either go up to 110 or drop to 60. If the stock goes up to 110 euros, your call option lets you buy it at 100 and sell it for 110, making a profit of 10 euros. On the other hand, if the stock goes down to 60, the call option becomes worthless because you wouldn't buy it for 100 when it's only worth 60. Now we want to create a portfolio that mimics the options payoff using only the stock itself. To do this, we buy H units of the stock to hedge against selling one call option. Our goal is to find the right H so that no matter where the stock moves, our portfolio's value remains the same. Here's the fun part. What if we could create a portfolio that mimics this option's payoff using just the stock itself? That's where hedging comes in. To hedge against selling one call option, we need to buy H units of the stock. Our goal? Find the perfect H that makes sure our portfolio value remains the same no matter where the stock moves. At the end of the year, if the stock jumps to 110, our portfolio value will be H multiplied by 110, then subtract 10 because we owe 10 euros on the call option. If the stock drops to 60, the portfolio value will simply be H multiplied by 60, since the option expires worthless. To make sure our hedge is perfect, these two values should be equal. Now let's solve for H, and for that, bring everything with H to one side. This leaves us with 50 times the number of shares being equal to 10. Finally, divide 10 by 50 to get 0.20. This means that to hedge one call option, you need to buy 0.20 shares of the stock. So why does this matter? Well, if the stock rises, the value of those 0.2 shares helps cover the money you owe on the call option. If the stock drops, the option expires worthless, but your stock position adjusts in a way that keeps your overall risk neutral. In summary, the hedge ratio tells us how many shares to buy or sell to eliminate risk when trading options. In our example, we needed to buy 0.2 shares per call option to perfectly hedge. Think of hedging like adjusting the number of umbrellas and raincoats in your store to manage risk. By using the hedge ratio, traders can protect themselves against market movements, ensuring their portfolios remain balanced regardless of whether prices rise or fall. Finally, let's talk about a magical concept called risk-neutral valuation. At first, risk neutrality sounds like telling you to ignore risk altogether, but that's not exactly what's going on. Instead, we're imagining a market where everyone's content to earn the risk-free rate, meaning they'll price derivatives in a way that yields the same return, on average, as risk-free bonds. Got the point? No? Oh, you might be wondering, what does risk neutrality even mean? Well, here's the key idea. When pricing derivatives, we don't care about real-world probabilities of price movements. Sounds weird, right? But it actually makes our lives easier because it means we only need to focus on volatility and the risk-free rate, rather than making assumptions about market sentiment or investor preferences. Now, if you're thinking, wait, didn't we already cover probabilities in the binomial model? Yes, but here's the twist. We don't actually care about real-world probabilities when pricing options. Instead, we use what's called a risk-neutral probability, which is a calculated probability that helps us determine an option's fair value without worrying about investors' risk preferences. This is huge because it means we don't have to debate whether a stock is more likely to go up or down based on news, sentiment, or economic trends. Instead, we just assume that investors are risk neutral, meaning they don't require extra return for taking on risk. That way, all we need to price an option is volatility, how much the stock moves up or down, and the risk-free rate, the return on a zero-risk investment like a treasury bond. In practice, this means we calculate a risk-neutral probability. If we assume the price of an option is simply the discounted expected value under these probabilities, we can solve for the risk-neutral probability denoted by pi in such a way that there's no free lunch for arbitrageurs. Here's how it works for a call option. We take the possible call payoffs if the price goes up and if the price goes down, multiply each payoff by pi or 1 minus pi, then discount that total back at the risk-free rate. That sum has to match the option's current market price, or else clever traders would swoop in and arbitrage away any mispricing. And that, folks, is our whirlwind tour of the one-period binomial model. We've covered how it sets up a simple up or down price path, how it's used to value European calls or more complex derivatives like callable bonds, and why risk-neutral probabilities are at the heart of no arbitrage pricing. I know there's a lot to digest here, but trust me, once you practice a few binomial tree examples, it'll make total sense. As always, keep FinQuiz's resources close at hand. These battle-ready summaries you're seeing on screen will let you revisit key concepts fast and will provide a sweet final review so nothing important falls through the cracks. And if you want to dig deeper, explore Stanley Notes. And there are 6 full-length mock exams to give you that exam day feel. So, study hard, stay focused, and I'll see you next time. Happy learning, everyone.